Welcome to the It Takes a Village podcast by Village Bank, where we bring leaders with expertise in finance, accounting, entrepreneurship, leadership, and branding into our village to help entrepreneurs like you in our community. As an entrepreneur's bank, we hear all the time that you want to know more about the financial nuances of starting and running a business. These questions are profoundly important and can be incredibly stressful. That's why we're inviting prominent leaders and friends of our village to weigh in and build a village of answers and connections on the It Takes a Village podcast. Thank you for joining us. Today we're talking to Mark Addicks, CEO of Manova Summit, Chair of the Marketing Innovation Department at the University of St. Thomas, former Chief Marketing Officer for General Mills, and overall marketing and business building expert. From his perspective as a marketer, a CEO, an investor, and a creator, Mark shares what it takes to leverage the full richness of marketing fundamentals to continue building your business and looking for opportunity in adversity.
Thanks, Mark, for joining me today.
I'm thrilled. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And when we set this up, we didn't have a clue what was going to be going on, did we?
No, we did not.
I think about your time at General Mills with Cheerios. I think of what you're doing with Manova right now. I think about the hospitality industry that you're part of, as well as the startups that you continue to mentor, and just how important it is that today, as we're all dealing with this new reality with COVID-19, and just what is that reality going to look like afterwards, and what the opportunities, really, people talk about the tough part, but it's what are these opportunities that we all have out there, and how the different businesses that you've been involved in, how those can continue to pivot and evolve in a time like this.
Yes. Well, I think before we start, I want to acknowledge that these are extremely stressful times. I think we're all going through that. I want to acknowledge pain, suffering, and certainly the deaths. But I'd love to use your word pivot for this conversation. And if there's kind of one big theme, I think opportunity, finding the opportunity in this crisis is critical. And I think it's critical for me, for everyone in the conversation, because, a lot of people are taking their cues off us, people who work with us, our customers and the like. And so our optimism and our dedication to finding opportunity is absolutely critical to getting some positive momentum out of this thing.
Oh, absolutely. And, thank you for acknowledging that. For lack of better words, maybe anxiety, right? That
yes.
has over, do I have a job? How will we build revenue? Is my family safe, both the generation underneath us as well as that generation above? And there's a lot of that out there. But as a professor, and I think you're the chair of the Marketing Innovation Department at St. Thomas, there is so much innovation out there that maybe like an industry like banking or an industry that's a little bit older, we have so much opportunity to reinvent, use technology to build our revenue, and use the resources like you and I have already talked about that we know are going to be there. And what do we already know that we can count on moving forward, because there is so much unknown?
One thing we really know is that consumers, customers, whether you're B2B or B2C, are adapting and changing behavior at an incredibly rapid speed right now. They're doing that as a means of survival or whatever. But, as somebody who's worked for a long time in the consumer marketing area, you are seeing rapid consumer adoption, rapid consumer abandonment of some of the things maybe they adopted 3 weeks ago and going on to the next thing. So I think you can count on people finding, if you really do have a unique and differentiated solution to something, you're going to see people, you got to message right, but help them. They will adopt pretty quickly. I think we also know that brands, very fundamental principles of marketing brands, developing brands, are never more important than today in terms of customer experience, delivering value, understanding how the kind of the customer experiences relate directly to sales, revenue, and profit, et cetera. Marketing isn't just marketing communications or this. Fundamentally, marketing is about markets. It's about finding markets, valuing them. How big are they? How big could they be? How could they be segmented? Who's in them? Who do you want to target? It's fundamentally, that's the number one thing in my mind that great marketers should do. They should find markets. And we know they're there, and they tend to be there before we see them. And sometimes somebody like Lululemon sees the market when nobody else sees it, and 12 years later, it's a $6 billion industry. So it's understanding those markets, what drives them, what's the aspiration of the market, and then starting to build a brand that serves that market or serves part of that market. You're ultimately saying, what are the markets that we never saw before? And there are markets that were sitting in the 10-mile radius of our restaurant we never saw before. And then, just keep a good marketer, I think, always stays close to the ground, listens, picks up things from everywhere.
Talk to me about the marketing basics that you always go back to. And then let's share an example of maybe if you were to build out a brand like Cheerios today, what would that look like? How would you do it differently today than maybe you did it in the past?
I love thinking through marketing and brand issues and challenges. But you should have a frame in front of you that helps guide you through that thinking. And I would tell you that 99% of the things that usually I have great conversations with people about, sometimes in a coffee shop with a startup, sometimes a bigger company, all surround just some very simple basics. Number one is fundamentally to a brand is that you need to be delivering something unique and different on a dimension that matters to the customer. And I always say it's true, and I was taught this way. Marketing is super easy to understand. It's a whole different animal to execute it. It's like the principles couldn't be simpler. You can nod your head, but actually doing them is important, and doing them well is important. And even then, it's difficult. So I can't tell you how many times because I love startups, I love new products. People know that about me. So I'll be in a coffee shop or something, and somebody puts a snack bar in front of me or shows me a new mobile thing, and I'm just like, so how is it unique and different on a dimension that really is going to matter now? And how does that difference kind of have a long runway? How do you think that's having a future? That's the first place I usually start. Then I go to, tell me about the marketplace. What is it? Define it, etc. And then who is the brand seeking to serve? And, typically what people feed back to me, I just had this about 2 weeks ago. I'll give you a quick example, but it tends to be somebody gives me demographic information. And in some cases, demographic information is a quick read for what you really need to know. But I usually push myself and others to say, don't just give me the demographic. Tell me, when you think about this target, what's the want, the need, the dream that they're after? Or what is the job that they need to have done? These are very basic marketing things, but specifically tell me what, who that target is. Is there what I call a brand champion, an ideal customer? Can we give her or him a name that we must be our advocate? And then we'll figure out what's aspirational. And I'll give you an example on how this comes to life in a minute. And then when you think about the brand and the life of the consumer, I tend to use what we call the brand benefit ladder, which is 4 points of contact of how the brand can really engage the customer for a long period of time. Those points of contact go from functional to emotional to social. And at the base, they're at what is it? What does it do functionally for the consumer? What does it do for me? That's your emotional territory. What can we do together? That's your social or movement territory. So when you build out a brand, you know, most of the experience and research tells us that when you really nail what does it do for me and what can we do together, you will have people who tend to participate and buy, not on price, but on value. As you get lower in the scale, functionally, what is it? What does it do? It tends to be more pricing. We also know from experience that, especially with millennials, and then going into Generation Z, but also older people, boomers like me, significant number of purchases in the last 10 years have moved towards the top of that ladder. What's in it for me? What can we do together? More social platforms, more cause platforms, those have been pretty sticky. So that's a very important kind of frame to think through of how your brand continues, how it fulfills and continues to fill and brings that value to life that you're delivering. So let's just take a quick example. Cheerios Today. You asked me about that. So that's a little hard because they're actually, if I'm thinking about the value that Cheerios brings, there are several markets that Cheerios serves. Typically, I push brands to really do one market, but it's one of those rare big brands like Cheerios, Coca-Cola, blah, 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 that have multiple markets they serve, but it's the same discipline. We sit down and say, what do we think the unique and differentiating thing that we bring that nobody else can? Underneath that, once you convince yourself of the market that you're bringing something unique, then we take that brand benefit ladder and walk through how we bring that differentiation to life at every step. So, you know, what is it? It's breakfast cereal, ready to eat breakfast cereal. What does it do? In the case of first-time moms, it is the first finger food for your child. What does it do for me? It makes me, gives me a way to nurture my child, see my child's development, but more importantly, gives them a chance to nurture me back, as they all do. They pass the O back, and to really enjoy that moment. And then what can we do together? There should be some kind of social movement or something that we could do together. At every stage of that, there are things that I would push us on, our team on. And again, whether it was 50 years ago with traditional radio or TV versus today with social, how do we make sure they know that we're unique and different all along that benefit ladder? So what does it do? Functional. It's a first finger food. Well, what don't they know about our finger food that's different from all the other options? Well, they probably don't know that we test every little O. We test it all week. We make sure that it dissolves within 11 seconds so your child can never choke. We know the other people don't do that. We're made from whole grain oats that we grow ourselves. We don't use pesticides on. Do they know that? And you start to kind of fill out, and that gives you a richer social schedule. So today, I would think of content. I would think about communications I could make to that customer, and then I would take that to the next level. If it's about nurturing, what does it do for me? That next ladder, step on the ladder. How do we make that moment special? Do we provide a platform where they can share that moment and show the world? Because they're so proud of their kid, and look, he feeds me. And how do they share it easily with grandparents and sisters and brothers and people they love, and share that joy as they see the personality of their child come alive, and they see all the cute things they do and the stories they can tell them with the O's. How do you bring that to life? And then you go to the movement level, and you ask yourself, what uniquely how we can uniquely do something together with this consumer? Not just you buy 4 boxes and we make a donation, but maybe that's the idea, but how do we make our donation more unique to the cause that we all agree we want to do, or the goal we want to hit? How do they know when we're making progress on that, et cetera? And that's how you kind of would blow out Cheerios Today, I think, on a social calendar and on a content calendar, as well as technology that allows them to make each of those experiences on the benefit ladder richer, more meaningful, more memorable, those kind of things. That's how I would do it. And what I think is really powerful is, you can do this with a new product. And first and foremost, what I teach is new product. There's so many examples of new products that come out in the marketplace, start communicating on social, whatever, and they're communicating at the third and fourth ladder. What does it do for me? What can we do together? There's some cause. And people are like, what is it? Like, what is it? And what functionally does it do? And you don't have to address everything with every communication. It's just thinking through that frame really helps.
How do you not overload people where they're like, wow, I know there's takeout. I can't even start to think of where am I going to take out from Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. And then on top of that, how do you build client loyalty or customer loyalty, brand loyalty to where, Mark, I'm not even going to look anywhere else because you're my guy, you're my restaurant, and I will order from you because I'll have the best food, the best service, and I want to keep you in business because I need you around, once we go back to sitting in your restaurant. So I think, how do you do that where it's not overload, but you're still in front of your clients, building that loyalty and being innovative?
You want to have a schedule so that you can get some clear reads. So, I think I really love that notion, but, think through the eyes of your customer, and there's only so much they can absorb because you're just a fraction of what they're doing. In terms of how you brand it, I think, the way you come out, you want to come out with something that feels unique and different, and that's not in the way your brand would do it. It can be, how do you make it unique in the customer experience? So, as I was taught in marketing, I believe words and copy and visuals and everything should be, it's like poetry. It should be chosen very carefully. And I think we're finding out that just little things where you talk about contactless delivery, blah, 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 those kind of things, they're very important. They're not a bunch of hype or superficiality, but if you're already doing some things, make sure you're branding the content of what you're doing, as well as the product or service of what you're doing. Adopt a language that fits your brand, but signals to them. That's a way you can do branding. The other way on loyalty is, can you structure a loyalty program? Maybe you never had one, but structure a loyalty program for now. We'd love to have you back, come with this many meals. And when you do, we're going to give you not just a free meal, but a different kind of meal, or give you insight into a certain type of food content, or get you exclusive to, we're going to send you some wines to taste for us as we're thinking about next week. What can you do uniquely that will tell them that you're not just a customer, you're a partner in this with us, and rewards them for being a partner with you. Now, discounting is one way that can be important, and I'm continuing to look. I think we all should continue to look at 33% at least of the people are feeling extremely squeezed financially. How do you help them do that? But do it in a smart way that rewards them, that makes them feel smart. You're just not giving them a discount.
I think a lot of what you're saying is going back to those brand basics and the basics of marketing and building customer loyalty. And whether it's Cheerios, or whether it's pizza, or whether it's a service or a widget or a platform for healthcare, it's always going back to those brand basics. And how do you use those marketing and brand basics to build your culture, build your company, and show the values that you stand for, and then continue to adopt that language that constantly talks about that. Because then anytime there's a decision to be made, whether it's a tough decision or it's a really great positive decision, you can always jump back to your values and why you made that decision. And you and I talked a lot about Manova, and we talked about how that business model is going to change, and that today you're kind of part of that. You're in the middle of that change and what that feels like, and how do you transition to that technology platform. What does that look like? How do you get everyone on board with it, whether it's your internal team and your clients? And so can you talk through that process a little bit and what that technology looks like from a framing it out kind of step by step?
Sure, I'll do my best. So just as a background piece, Manova is a global summit on the future of health. I always say it's like South by Southwest, TED Talk, and Davos rolled into one. And it's a broad definition of health. I mean, what we're talking about is health that everything from fitness to nutrition to environment, all the way to heart surgery, cancer therapies, etc. And we built Manova starting about 3 years ago, and it was always going to be a conference placed here in Minneapolis. We studied very much like the South by Southwest model, and you can name other conferences. That world has totally changed. As my partners, as we talked about Manova, kind of the first time I said is, I don't think we can do the conference in 2020. People are like, don't you think it'll be over by then? Do you think it's coming to the United States? You're like, oh my God, look at this. But I would have to say the global nature of it made us very aware and sensitive in January. This is before mid-January. And then as we talked with people in France and England, well, these people are all experts in health. And even somebody in Africa, they all were like, hey, do you realize what's happening in the world? This is a pandemic. And from that point on, we kind of went through several phases. One is, going back to the brand, Manova, what's the value proposition? What are we trying to do that's different and unique? And then separate that from the old business model, which was getting people together once a year, having it be, some of the value be the interaction between people in real time with experts in a number of formats, and moving that to a virtual platform. And that's exactly kind of where we are now. We haven't announced anything, but we're, as we move in the frame, you start to say, how do you bring value, the same value, in a more robust, interesting way, using a different platform, so new business model. And then the third phase was literally figuring out specifically the business model. The old model was sponsorships and fees from participants. The new model is going to be what? And then how will you do it? The old model was 3 intensive days of presentations starting at 8 in the morning till into the night. With a lot of networking and everything. What is that new model? Is that flow over a year and the like? So it was really this idea of start with the brand and its value, and then talk about in the new world that you're going to serve, what's happened to your marketplace, which ours shifted from live to virtual is where it's going to go. And then so reconfigure your business model from there, move quickly, fast, and be a rapid adopter and adapter, I think, are some of the key things that we found. We're in the middle of it. It's very gnarly. It's very different. Everything about it is different. If you ever paid a fee for a keynote speaker, that fee is totally different in the virtual world. Production costs are very different. Actually, they're very positive. But the factors of being first and trying to figure that out are very different, right? Your pricing structure looks completely different. So the 4 P's of your model, if you will, price, product, promotion, place, everything changes. So that's where we are right now with Manova. Another big opportunity, it's hard doing it the first time, but we're doing a fundraiser in a couple weeks. It's a virtual dinner with wine, where we have wine coming from Oregon, we have dinners coming from restaurants, dessert coming from another place, all delivered to your home for a fee. And then there are tiers to that fee, and we're bringing in kind of private sessions with kind of very interesting people from the East Coast and the West Coast that fit the nonprofit. And we're literally producing an hour, which has video and visuals and music. And that's where I see this thing going. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm sure they're going to be, I was working on it this morning. It's going to be for the planners, the first time is always like, oh my God, yes, we forgot that. We got to do this. But the point is that you got to keep evolving. Consumers are already, our targets are already tired of static fundraisers, showing people in their home, just talking, please give us money. Now they want to go to the next level. Can we turn this and make this into a really special occasion? We're hoping we can, and we're going to try this new way of doing it. You know, the very first instinct we have as human beings is to take what we were doing and try to put it on the new platform and the new way of doing it. So we all saw that with the internet, right? We all saw that with banner ads and ads. You tried to do traditional advertising and it never worked. And it needs to be rethought and readapted. It's the same for maybe some of the things you were doing traditionally. So let's take the nonprofit example. You know, oh my God, what's happening to our golf tournament? We raised this much money. You know, maybe you don't do a golf tournament. Maybe you don't reinvent a golf tournament for the virtual world, but you rethink, try to break apart. What was the value people got out of this? What could we recreate? And you know, hopefully do it with the mindset of what can be sustainable coming from this. So we can go back to the golf tournament, but now we have this new thing. So we actually have two great things we can do going forward. I think that's part of it. I think the other thing I would caution all of us is, you know, in customer world, I always say it's fine to poll them. It's fine to research them. I would say today there's a lot of polling and you're seeing a lot of similarities in the responses. I really am encouraging myself, our teams, and others that I work with to try to get beyond just simple opinions and understand the intensity of those opinions, because I think that's where the opportunities are. The second thing is the most important thing, which you can do through technology as well as other means, is watch how they're behaving, not what they're saying. That is a general marketing truth. It's the most valuable thing.
I just read something in the paper today that there's a lot of consumers that are waiting and are going to wait a quarter or two until they buy the house, put the pool in, buy the car, whatever it might be, because they actually believe that prices are going to go down. How do you build consumer confidence today? And how do you be respectful of people's decision making, but also understanding that you don't want to push them into any decisions they're not ready to make and, quite frankly, scare them away?
You know, if you really know who you're targeting and you know the market, you just said they believe. That's an accepted consumer or customer belief. Now, many of us know that, you know, let's take the case of it might be a good time to buy a house, actually, but they don't believe that. So you've got to tell them why you believe, or here's a new piece of information you may not know. But I think you start out with an acknowledgement of these are difficult times. They're changing times. We don't know where we're going to land. And most people feel this way. Start out with from a point of empathy is always a way to start out, and start out and acknowledge kind of this is where we collectively believe and think today. However, here's some things you may not know, and help kind of take them down that path of why that what they believe might be different, and it actually might be better to move earlier than later. And I've seen people do that in one-to-one kind of selling or marketing, and I've seen them do it kind of with some of these bigger purchases. Why might this answer the question for them? Really attack the belief. And then what does your brand do? What can you offer them that makes that a less risky choice? So whether you're a bank, obviously, that really cares about your customer, maybe you're a car dealership, but you've got to, in order to engage them, you've got to acknowledge what they believe and what we generally believe right now, and then educate them. And those can be very powerful messages. Telling people things they don't know. Again, you've heard me say a couple times during this talk, people they don't want to be talked down to. They want to be talked to or talked up to, and they want to feel smart. So make them smart. So maybe also, depending on what kind of category we're talking or what kind of purchase we're talking about, size, complexity or something, you may want to break that down. All I want to do with this first conversation or this first set of content or whatever is just educate them and not tell them to buy, but just educate them. And maybe you create a product, a set of content that is like eyes on the market. I'm going to send you this every 2 days and tell you, you see what we're seeing. And here's the data we have in front of us. And the first step is empathy and education. And then you go to the sell. Maybe you can do that all in one communication. It depends on your platform you're using and the like. But I think that is the way to approach it. Acknowledge situation, acknowledge their beliefs, tell them why they might want to believe differently, and then tell them what you can do differently for them to make them feel better about the possible choice. Ethically as a leader, if you're having your teams go out and sell something that's not a good idea for the customer, but it's obviously the business needs it, you kind of have to stop and say, let's come all the way back. We got to figure out why this is a good idea for the customer in addition to the business, and recalibrate somehow the value exchange or what we're offering so that it's really good for the customer as well as the business. And maybe that's just the way we're going to go forward is, why am I engaging you? And what can we do to make your life better? That ultimately is the value of marketing to a market and of creating a brand that answers a need, want, dream, or job.
I love that. Mark, that is such a perfect way to wrap this up. It's all about, how do we make each other's lives better? Because, today is a globalism, nationalism, is that you're, the main street, local businesses, we're all in this together. We're all here to solve this problem and get back to whatever that new normal is really going to be for us. And that's why we created these sessions, Mark. And I've got to say, I have been dying to get on this session with you because you have this vast history of all these different industries and how you've really turned them and branded them and really changed the landscape for business, not just in the Twin Cities, but globally. So I've got sheets of notes here that I've taken from what you've said today. And I just want to thank you again for your time.
Oh my God. Thank you for having me. I hope there's one thing that helped somebody, but thank you very much. I really had a great time.
Thanks for joining us on It Takes a Village, hosted by Alicia Webb. If you liked what you heard today and want to hear more, follow us on social media at Village Bank Online on Facebook and Instagram, and Village Banking on Twitter.